Captain Jake Morrison stared at the screen showing deep space readings that made no sense at all, and his coffee had gone cold hours ago, while he tried to understand what his ship had found out here in the empty void between star systems where nothing should exist but his navigator. Lisa Park kept insisting the signal was real and getting stronger as they moved closer to coordinates that appeared on no star chart ever made by human hands. The UNS Defiant had been sent to investigate reports of strange transmissions coming from somewhere near the galactic core, and Jake had thought it would be another boring mission, checking out dead satellites or cosmic background noise, but this signal was different because it seemed to be speaking in patterns that almost made sense, like someone was trying to tell them something important across impossible distances of space and time. Lisa Park called out from her station that she was picking up multiple signal sources, all broadcasting the same basic pattern but from different locations scattered across several star systems. And when she plotted them on the main display, the pattern looked almost like a map, pointing toward something hidden in a region of space that most civilizations avoided because ancient records claimed it was cursed or dangerous. Engineer Carlos Rodriguez had been working for 6 hours straight trying to decode the transmission format, and he finally looked up from his console with excitement in his eyes as he announced that the signals were using a mathematical base that predated any known galactic civilization by thousands of years. But somehow the basic structure felt familiar, like something humans might have created if they had been spacefaring. For much longer than official records showed, Dr. Amy Chen, the ship xenobiologist, had been studying the signal patterns from a different angle, and she discovered that embedded within the mathematical sequences were what appeared to be genetic markers that matched sections of human DNA with precision that should have been impossible for any ancient civilization to achieve unless they had access to human genetic samples from somewhere. Jake made the decision to follow the signals to their source, despite knowing that taking his ship into uncharted territory could mean court-martial if he was wrong about the importance of what they had discovered. But something deep in his gut told him that this was bigger than just another routine exploration mission, and that humanity needed to know what was out there calling to them across the void. The first coordinate led them to a star system with a dying red giant that should have been empty according to all surveys. But as they approached, Lisa detected a massive artificial structure orbiting the star at a distance that should have made it invisible to long-range sensors until now. The structure was enormous and clearly artificial, with technology that looked nothing like any known galactic civilization, but somehow it felt familiar to Jake, as if he had seen similar designs in dreams or half-remembered stories from childhood, and Carlos confirmed that the structure was actively scanning their ship with energy patterns that showed no hostility, but definite recognition. Amy ran detailed scans of the station and discovered that it was incredibly old, but still functioning with power sources that defied understanding and biological samples stored in chambers that had been maintained for millennia with genetic material from hundreds of different species, including several that matched human baseline DNA almost perfectly. When Jake ordered the ship to dock with the ancient station, the massive doors opened automatically as if the structure had been waiting for them specifically, and the docking bay was filled with breathable atmosphere that matched human requirements exactly despite the station being older than human spaceflight by thousands of years. The crew explored corridors filled with technology that seemed to respond to their presence by lighting up and displaying information in languages that shifted and changed until they became readable in perfect English. And Jake realized that whatever built this place had been expecting humans to find it eventually. In the central chamber, they discovered a vast database that began downloading information directly into their ship computers without being asked. And the data included star charts showing the locations of dozens of similar stations scattered throughout the galaxy, along with biological records that suggested someone had been guiding evolution on countless worlds for millennia. Amy made the most disturbing discovery when she found genetic samples that were unmistakably human, but dated to times long before Earth had developed space travel, and the implications hit Jake like a physical blow as he realized they might have stumbled onto evidence that humanity was far older and more widespread than anyone had ever imagined. Carlos detected that their arrival had triggered some kind of activation sequence, and systems throughout the station were coming online after eons of dormancy, while automated transmitters began broadcasting signals to other locations across the galaxy, and Jake knew that their discovery would not remain secret for long. The station computer finally spoke to them in perfect English, with a voice that sounded almost human, as it welcomed them home after such a long absence. And Jake felt his understanding of human history and their place in the galaxy beginning to crumble, as the ancient facility prepared to reveal secrets that would change everything they thought they knew about who they really were and where they had come from. The station computer called itself Guardian 7, and it began showing Jake and his crew holographic displays of star systems they had never seen before, while explaining that this facility was one of 63 identical installations spread across the galaxy, and all of them had been waiting for humans to return and reclaim what had been left behind for safekeeping during the long years of absence, and forgetting Lisa Park worked frantically at her navigation console trying to plot the locations of other Guardian stations using star charts that the ancient computer provided. But the charts showed stellar positions from thousands of years ago when stars had been in different places, and she realized that whoever built these stations had been mapping the galaxy since before recorded galactic history. Carlos Rodriguez discovered that the station technology was based on principles that human science was only beginning to understand, and the power systems used controlled fusion reactions that could run for millions of years without maintenance, while the quantum communication networks allowed instant contact between stations separated by thousands of light years. Amy Chen spent hours in the biological archives studying genetic samples that told an impossible story because the DNA sequences she found came from species across the galaxy, but all of them showed signs of deliberate modification using techniques that matched human genetic engineering methods that had only been developed in recent decades. The most shocking discovery came when Amy found complete genetic profiles for species that had been extinct for millennia, and every single one showed evidence of careful guidance and protection during crucial stages of evolutionary development, as if someone had been shepherding life across the galaxy for thousands of years. Jake began experiencing vivid dreams whenever he rested, and in these dreams he saw vast cities on worlds he had never visited, while humans in strange clothing worked alongside alien species to build incredible technologies and protect young civilizations from threats that came from dark spaces between the stars. Communications officer Danny Walsh picked up encrypted transmissions from multiple sources across the galaxy, and when he managed to decode fragments of the messages, he realized that other species were investigating similar discoveries on their homeworlds, and ancient sites that had been considered mythical were suddenly becoming active again. The Guardian 7 computer explained that the biological samples were not just records, but actual preserved genetic material from species that the ancient human civilization had helped to evolve and protect, and many of these species still existed in the modern galaxy but had forgotten their origins and the debt they owed to their long-vanished benefactors. Lisa made a disturbing discovery when she compared the ancient star charts with current galactic maps, because several star systems that should have existed according to the Guardian records were now empty space with no trace of the worlds or civilizations that had once thrived there, as if entire solar systems had been completely erased from existence. Carlos found technical specifications for technologies that were centuries ahead of current human capabilities, including faster-than-light communication systems that worked by manipulating quantum fields and defensive systems that could create barriers using controlled stellar energy, and he realized that humanity had once possessed knowledge that made them the most advanced species in the galaxy. The station began receiving responses from other Guardian facilities as they came online after millennia of silence, and each activation sent ripples through subspace that were detected by civilizations across the galaxy, who began sending investigation fleets toward the ancient installations without understanding what they were approaching. Amy discovered that the human genetic modifications found in so many species were not random improvements, but specific adaptations designed to help each race survive particular types of cosmic threats. And she began to suspect that the ancient human civilization had known about dangers that still existed somewhere in the dark spaces beyond the galactic rim. Danny intercepted military communications from several major galactic powers and learned that fleets were being mobilized to investigate the Guardian station activations, while political leaders demanded answers about the true origins of structures that predated their own civilizations by thousands of years. Jake realized that their discovery had started, something that could not be stopped as Guardian stations across the galaxy continued coming online and broadcasting signals that were being detected by every spacefaring civilization. And he knew that soon the secret would be revealed to the entire galaxy. Whether humanity was ready or not, the Guardian 7 computer showed them records of the final days of the ancient human civilization, and Jake watched in amazement as his ancestors made the decision to transcend physical existence, rather than continue fighting an enemy that threatened all life in the galaxy. But before their transformation, they had prepared these stations to guide their descendants when the time came to face that same threat again. Carlos discovered that the station defenses were far more powerful than anything in the current galactic arsenal, and the weapons systems were designed to work in coordination with similar installations across the galaxy to create a defensive network that could protect entire star systems from attack. Amy found genetic sequences that were not from any known species, and when she analyzed them, she realized they belonged to something that should not exist because the DNA showed characteristics of a species that had been engineered, specifically to survive in the vacuum of space and feed on stellar radiation. Lisa detected massive gravitational anomalies at the edge of sensor range, and when she tried to plot their trajectories, she discovered that something enormous was moving through dark matter clouds toward the galaxy, and the objects were following paths that would bring them into contact with inhabited star systems within months. The Guardian computer confirmed their worst fears when it announced that the ancient enemy had returned, and the activation of the Guardian network was not a celebration of human heritage, but a desperate preparation for war against creatures that had been waiting in the darkness between galaxies for humanity to become strong enough to face them again. 3 days after the Guardian station activated, Jake found his ship surrounded by a joint fleet representing every major power in the Galactic Council, and the alien commanders were demanding immediate access to the ancient facility, while threatening to take it by force if humans refused to cooperate with what they called a matter of galactic security. Admiral Helen Foster arrived aboard the flagship of the human diplomatic fleet, and she brought with her enough firepower to level a small moon. But Jake could see in her eyes that she was more interested in protecting the secret they had discovered than in starting a war with species that had been humanity allies for generations. The alien fleet commanders held emergency meetings in the shadow of the Guardian station, while their scientists ran every scan they could think of. But the ancient technology resisted all attempts at analysis and only responded to direct contact from human crew members, which made the other species increasingly suspicious about human involvement. Amy Chen accompanied Admiral Foster to the negotiation sessions, and she tried to explain that humans had no more understanding of the Guardian stations than anyone else. But the alien representatives refused to believe that such advanced technology would respond only to humans unless there was some kind of prior connection. The Zephyrian ambassador accused humanity of hiding their true origins and claimed that the Guardian stations were proof that humans had been manipulating galactic politics for centuries while pretending to be a young species that had only recently achieved spaceflight. Commander Vex of the Andromedian Union demanded that human scientists be removed from the station so that neutral researchers could study the technology without human interference, but Admiral Foster refused because she knew that only human crew members could access the Guardian systems. Jake found himself caught between his duty to his own species and his responsibility to the galactic community as tensions escalated and weapon systems on both sides powered up, while diplomats argued about ownership rights to technology that predated all their civilizations. The negotiations reached a breaking point when the Guardian 7 computer suddenly activated the main display systems and began broadcasting a message in every known galactic language simultaneously, while announcing that the inheritors had finally returned to claim their birthright. Me watched in amazement as the station AI addressed Jake Morrison by name, despite the fact that no human had visited the facility for over 50,000 years, and the computer began explaining that it had been waiting patiently for humanity to develop the technology necessary to find and activate the ancient network. Admiral Foster realized that they could no longer deny human involvement when Guardian 7 showed holographic records of the original human civilization and their role in seeding life across the galaxy while protecting young species from cosmic threats that still existed in the dark spaces between stars. The alien commanders were shocked to learn that their own species had been guided and protected by ancient humans during crucial periods of their evolutionary development, and that genetic modifications in their DNA were proof of intervention by a civilization that had transcended physical existence thousands of years ago. Lisa Park helped translate the technical data that Guardian 7 provided to the mixed scientific teams, and she discovered that the ancient human civilization had not died out, but had transformed themselves into beings of pure energy who could travel instantly between stars and continue their work of protecting life. Carlos Rodriguez worked with alien engineers to understand the station systems, but he found that most of the advanced technology required human genetic markers to activate, and the ancient computers would only accept commands from crew members whose DNA matched specific sequences. Danny Walsh intercepted communications between the alien fleets and learned that several species were reporting similar discoveries on their home worlds where ancient ruins were suddenly becoming active and revealing evidence of human involvement in their early development. The Guardian computer revealed that the recent activation was not random, but had been triggered by humanity reaching a crucial milestone in their technological development, and that the network had been monitoring human progress for centuries, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Jake realized that the ancient stations were not just repositories of knowledge, but were part of a galaxy-spanning defense system designed to protect intelligent life from an enemy that had been defeated once but never completely destroyed. Amy discovered that the genetic modifications found in so many species were not just evolutionary improvements but were specific preparations for a coming conflict, and that every race the ancient humans had touched carried within their DNA the potential to resist an influence that could control minds and corrupt civilizations. Admiral Foster found herself trying to explain to increasingly hostile alien commanders that humanity had no memory of their ancient heritage, and that the current human civilization was as surprised by these revelations as everyone else. The situation became even more complicated when Guardian 7 announced that other stations across the galaxy were detecting signs of the ancient enemy returning, and that the defense network needed to be fully activated within months, or the galaxy would face extinction. Commander Vex accused humans of orchestrating an elaborate deception designed to give them control over galactic affairs, but his arguments lost credibility when his own species scientists confirmed that their homeworld contained similar Guardian technology that had been dormant for millennia. Jake made the decision to share everything they had learned with the combined fleets, because he realized that the coming threat was too large for any single species to face alone, and that the ancient human civilization had prepared the Guardian network specifically for cooperation between all intelligent life. The alien commanders reluctantly agreed to work together when Guardian 7 showed them sensor readings of massive objects moving through dark matter toward the galactic rim, and the computer explained that these were advanced scouts for an invasion force that had been gathering strength in the void between galaxies for thousands of years. Guardian 7 granted Jake and his crew access to the Archive of Ages, which contained the complete history of the galaxy, spanning back millions of years, and Amy Chen felt her understanding of evolution and biology crumble as she studied records, showing that life itself had been guided and shaped by an ancient human civilization that had originated not on Earth, but on a world near the galactic core. Lisa Park worked with alien navigators to process star charts that showed the galaxy as it had existed 50,000 years ago, when human colonies spread across thousands of worlds, and massive ships moved between star systems carrying terraforming equipment and genetic samples to seed new worlds with life. The truth revealed in the archives was staggering because humanity had not evolved on Earth at all, but had been transplanted there by their own ancestors as part of a grand plan to preserve their species during a war that had consumed entire galaxies and threatened to destroy all intelligent life. Carlos Rodriguez studied technical specifications for technologies that made current galactic civilization look primitive, and he discovered that the original human empire had possessed the ability to manipulate matter at the quantum level while creating artificial worlds and moving stars to more favorable positions. Jake learned that his people had once ruled a confederation of species that spanned multiple galaxies and had devoted their incredible technology to protecting and nurturing younger civilizations while defending them from threats that came from dimensions beyond normal space. The ancient humans had discovered that they were not alone in the universe and that other forms of intelligence existed in the dark spaces between galaxies, including entities that viewed all biological life as a threat to their existence and sought to either control or destroy every living world. Amy found genetic records showing that the original human civilization had developed the ability to modify their own DNA at will and had created specialized subspecies adapted for different environments, including deep space exploration and direct contact with alien intelligences that existed as pure energy guardian. 7 explained that the war against the entities from dark space had lasted for thousands of years and had forced the ancient humans to make increasingly desperate choices, including the decision to abandon physical existence entirely and become beings of living energy who could continue fighting in dimensions that biological creatures could not access. The archive showed that before their transcendence, the ancient humans had established colonies on millions of worlds, including a small, blue planet in an unremarkable star system, where they placed genetic samples designed to eventually evolve into a new human civilization that would inherit their legacy when the time was right. Lisa discovered that the Guardian stations were not just defensive installations, but were part of a vast network that included hidden bases inside stars and artificial worlds disguised as moons, while weapons platforms disguised as asteroids waited for activation signals from human descendants. Carlos found that the ancient technology was designed to respond only to specific genetic markers that existed in their purest form among humans who had developed naturally on Earth without genetic modification, and that the current crew of the Defiant carried the exact DNA sequences needed to activate the most powerful systems. The archives revealed that the entities from dark space called themselves the Devourers, and they existed by consuming the life energy of entire civilizations while leaving behind empty worlds that could never again support biological existence. Amy learned that the genetic modifications found in so many species were not random improvements, but were specific preparations for the return of the Devourers, and that every race the ancient humans had touched carried dormant abilities that would activate when the defense network came online. Jake discovered that Earth had been chosen as a refuge world because its location in a spiral arm of the galaxy provided natural protection from the Devourers, while allowing human civilization to develop the technology necessary to eventually reactivate the ancient defense systems. The Guardian computer showed them records of the final battle between the ancient human civilization, and the Devourers and Jake watched his transcended ancestors sacrifice their physical existence to drive the enemy back beyond the galactic rim while sealing dimensional barriers that had held for 50,000 years. Danny Walsh detected that the barriers were failing, as the Devourers had spent millennia finding ways to weaken the dimensional walls, and their advanced scouts were already probing the outer regions of the galaxy while seeking worlds with large populations to consume. Admiral Foster studied tactical records from the ancient war and realized that the original human military had possessed weapons capable of destroying entire star systems, but had refused to use them because such actions would have made them no better than the enemies they fought. Carlos discovered that the Guardian network included weapons platforms hidden throughout the galaxy, but these could only be activated by someone carrying the complete ancient human genetic template, and after 50,000 years of evolution, that template existed in its purest form only among humans born on Earth. The archive revealed that the transcended humans had been fighting the Devourers in other dimensions for millennia, but they could not directly interfere in physical reality and could only provide guidance to their biological descendants when the ancient enemy returned. Amy found records showing that the Devourers were not a single species, but were a collective consciousness that absorbed other intelligences and used their knowledge against them, while growing stronger with each civilization they consumed. Jake realized that the activation of the Guardian network was not just about protecting humanity, but was about preserving all life in the galaxy, because the Devourers would not stop until every living world had been stripped of biological existence and converted into energy for their endless hunger. The Guardian computer announced that 62 other stations had now come online and were detecting Devourer infiltration in several star systems, where populations were beginning to show signs of mental manipulation and loss of individual identity as the ancient enemy prepared for their final assault on galactic civilization. Danny Walsh detected massive gravitational disturbances at the edge of the galaxy, and when he analyzed the sensor readings, he realized that enormous ships were emerging from dark matter clouds where they had been hiding for thousands of years, while preparing for an invasion that would consume every living world. Admiral Foster coordinated with alien fleet commanders as they received reports of entire star systems going silent, while their populations showed signs of mental control and loss of individual thought as the Devourers began their final assault on galactic civilization using techniques that turned people into willing servants of their ancient enemy. Amy Chen made a crucial discovery when she analyzed biological samples from affected worlds and found that the Devourer influence worked by attacking the genetic modifications that ancient humans had placed in various species to help them resist mental manipulation, and the enemy had spent 50,000 years learning how to corrupt these protective measures. Guardian 7 revealed that the ancient weapons platforms hidden throughout the galaxy were coming online, but needed direct activation from someone carrying the pure human genetic template, and Jake realized that he and his crew were the only people in the galaxy who could trigger the defensive systems. Carlos Rodriguez worked frantically with alien engineers to integrate Guardian technology with modern ships, and they discovered that the ancient systems could enhance contemporary weapons beyond anything previously imagined, while creating energy shields that could protect entire fleets from Devourer attacks. Lisa Park plotted invasion routes as Devourer ships moved toward the galactic core, and she realized that the enemy was following the same paths they had used 50,000 years ago when they had nearly succeeded in destroying all biological life before being stopped by the sacrifice of the transcended human civilization. Jake found himself experiencing visions that showed him the locations of hidden weapon systems and he began to understand that the transcended humans were trying to guide him toward the tools necessary to fight an enemy that existed partially outside normal space and could not be defeated using conventional warfare. The situation became desperate when entire sectors reported that their populations were losing individual identity and becoming part of a collective consciousness that served the devourers. While using their knowledge and technology to make the invasion more effective, Amy discovered that the genetic modifications in various species were beginning to activate as the Guardian network came fully online, and people across the galaxy were developing abilities they had never possessed, including enhanced mental resistance and the capacity to detect devourer influence. Danny intercepted communications from devourer-controlled worlds and learned that the enemy was not just consuming populations, but was using their combined knowledge to locate and destroy Guardian stations before the defense network could become fully operational. Admiral Foster realized that they were running out of time when sensor readings showed that the main Devourer fleet was approaching the Galactic core, where the primary Guardian station maintained control over the entire defensive network, and losing that facility would mean the end of all resistance. Carlos made a breakthrough when he discovered that Guardian technology could create temporary bridges to the dimension where the transcended humans existed, and Jake began receiving direct communication from his ancient ancestors who had been fighting the Devourers for millennia in realms beyond physical space. The transcended humans explained that they could not directly interfere in the physical battle, but they could enhance the abilities of their biological descendants and provide knowledge about devourer weaknesses that had been learned through 50,000 years of interdimensional warfare. Lisa detected that stars throughout the galaxy were beginning to exhibit unusual energy patterns, and Guardian 7 revealed that the ancient human civilization had hidden defensive installations inside stellar cores where they had been waiting for activation signals from their descendants. Amy found that the devourer influence could be resisted by individuals who embraced their genetic heritage, and she began working with representatives from various species to help them unlock the dormant abilities that ancient humans had placed in their DNA. Jake realized that the Guardian stations were not just weapons platforms, but were part of a galaxy-spanning consciousness that could coordinate defensive actions across thousands of light years while using the energy of stars themselves as ammunition against an enemy that fed on life force. The battle began in earnest when Devourer fleets attacked the outer Guardian stations, and Jake watched ancient weapons come online for the first time in 50,000 years as stellar energy was focused and directed against ships that existed partially outside normal space. Carlos integrated his consciousness with the Guardian network and discovered that he could control weapons platforms across multiple star systems while coordinating with the transcended humans who provided tactical information about enemy movements in dimensions that biological creatures could not perceive. Amy worked with alien scientists to distribute genetic activators that would help entire populations resist devourer mental control, and she realized that the ancient human civilization had prepared every detail of this defense. Thousands of years before their descendants would be born, Danny established communication links between Guardian stations across the galaxy and discovered that the network was designed to learn and adapt during battle while using the combined knowledge of all connected species to develop new strategies against an enemy that had seemed invincible. The fate of galactic civilization hung in the balance as Jake Morrison and his crew found themselves at the center of a war that spanned dimensions, while fighting an enemy that their ancient ancestors had been battling for longer than recorded history, and the stars themselves prepared to join the fight. The final battle erupted across the galaxy as Devourer fleets converged on the galactic core, where the primary Guardian station housed the master control systems, and Jake Morrison led a desperate coalition fleet toward the heart of ancient human territory, while reality itself seemed to bend around ships that existed partially outside normal space and time. Admiral Foster coordinated defensive actions across dozens of star systems as Guardian weapons platforms emerged from hiding places within stellar cores and began directing the energy of entire stars against an enemy that had consumed civilizations for millions of years while growing stronger with each world. They devoured Lisa Park, worked with navigators from every major species to plot safe passages through space that was being twisted by devourer technology. And she discovered that the ancient human civilization had prepared for this exact scenario by creating stable corridors through dimensions that the enemy could not fully access or control. Carlos Rodriguez found himself connected to the Guardian network across the entire galaxy, and he could feel the consciousness of every activated station as they worked together to coordinate a defense that spanned thousands of light years, while drawing power directly from the quantum structure of space itself. Amy Chen distributed genetic activators to populations throughout the galaxy and watched as dormant abilities awakened in species that had forgotten their connection to ancient human benefactors, and people began developing mental shields that could resist devourer influence while maintaining their individual consciousness. Danny Walsh established communication with the transcended humans who existed as beings of pure energy in dimensions beyond physical space, and they provided crucial intelligence about devourer movements, while explaining that the enemy could only be permanently defeated by trapping them between dimensional barriers. The devourer main fleet reached the galactic core, and Jake found himself facing ships that were larger than moons, while possessing weapons that could drain the life force from entire star systems. And he realized that conventional tactics would be useless against an enemy that had been perfecting their methods for millions of years. Guardian 7 announced that the Master Control Station was under direct assault, and the primary defensive systems were being overwhelmed by devourer technology that could corrupt and control any artificial intelligence that did not possess specific genetic safeguards built into its programming. Amy made a crucial discovery when she realized that the devourer collective consciousness had a fatal weakness because their need to absorb and control other intelligences made them vulnerable to genetic sequences that had been specifically designed to cause feedback loops in their mental network. Jake connected his consciousness directly to the Guardian Master Control and felt his awareness expand across the galaxy as he gained access to weapons and defensive systems that his ancient ancestors had built into the very structure of space, while preparing for a war that would determine the fate of all biological life. The battle reached its climax when Carlos activated stellar manipulation systems that had been hidden within hundreds of stars, and Jake watched in amazement as ancient human technology began using the fusion reactions of entire solar systems as components in a galaxy-spanning weapon network. Lisa detected that the devourers were attempting to retreat to dark space when they realized that their invasion was failing, but the transcended humans had been waiting for this moment, and they helped Jake activate dimensional barriers that would trap the enemy within the galaxy where they could be destroyed. Admiral Foster led the combined fleets in a final assault on the Devourer command ships, while Guardian stations across the galaxy synchronized their weapon systems and began channeling the energy of stellar cores through quantum conduits that focused unimaginable power against ships that had seemed invincible. Amy activated the genetic fail-safes that ancient humans had hidden in Devourer DNA during previous encounters, and she watched the enemy collective consciousness begin to tear itself apart as conflicting genetic commands created cascading failures throughout their shared mental network. Danny established contact with Guardian stations in other galaxies and learned that similar battles were being fought across the universe as transcended human consciousness worked to coordinate the defense of biological life against enemies that existed in the spaces between realities. The Devourers made a final desperate attempt to destroy the galactic core, but Jake had merged his consciousness with the Guardian network so completely that he could feel every star in the galaxy, and he directed Their combined energy through weapon systems that turned space itself into a weapon against creatures that fed on life. Carlos realized that the ancient human civilization had been preparing for this moment across millions of years, and that every decision they had made, including their own transcendence, had been part of a plan to ensure that their biological descendants would have the tools necessary to protect all intelligent life. The enemy fleet was finally trapped within dimensional barriers that prevented their escape to dark space, and the combined forces of the galaxy used Guardian technology to systematically destroy ships that had terrorized the universe for eons, while ensuring that the Devourer threat would never return. Watched as populations across the galaxy began to recover from Devourer influence, and she realized that the genetic modifications left by ancient humans would continue to protect future generations while ensuring that biological life would never again be vulnerable to collective consciousness attacks. Jake found himself standing in the primary Guardian station as representatives from every species in the galaxy gathered to establish a new alliance based on their shared heritage as children of the ancient human civilization and their responsibility to protect life throughout the universe. The stars themselves seemed to sing with joy as the Guardian network transitioned from a war footing to its peacetime purpose of guiding and protecting the development of intelligent life, and Jake knew that humanity had finally reclaimed their destiny not as conquerors, but as eternal guardians of the galaxy.